Be the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Mamenu nyina ko Honorable Kwadwo Oppong Nkrumah ho eye ofuase ayrebi MP na abusia owura no ahwe Nsem-Pii ede egu ho na NDC amayeko nkontompo ene eniema wo mu ye Ghana ha na wo mpesa Ghana for beti no Honorable Kwadwo Oppong Nkrumah atimu adane nyina di ene anapaya medibi ba abesom wo say IMF warning bi atimu aba eye warning ben ene aba no say Ghana ye economy no say NDC amayeko no hefa pa na wodeko watimu achechemu a abusua enya asamketua enti ena dollar no wasan ya hyase a wo pagye nimu Honorable Kwadwo Oppong Nkrumah eba no sika sempa dia o ho abodini wodi nsem ni nyina go ho abusua ba bia NDC amayeko no womode Ghana ekono se wanhwegi na wo mantie ensem a IMF wo ka kire mo ensem a minority fo ka kire mo a wanhwe ya Ghana de ebi hu no emfa asem papa mba Honorable Kwadwo Oppong Nkrumah say wo bisa NDC amayeko no say one job three people no enfa na wo adwuma ba ko a enipa miensa ebeye no wo say sansem ni nyina no na eyenkontompo a NDC amayeko baaye wo de beweni aba abusuya yenko na Ghana ye economy no the state of Ghana's economy baby akwaduru Honorable Kwadwo Oppong Nkrumah watimu adwudwama Ghana for atododo na ayemhihye yenko na wankasa kokoti yeba Nsem-Pii TV said that yero no ensem hodo a egu ya ponso no yeba sign any latifo ache.
You see, if you look at what the 24-hour economy is about, it was supposed to be the answer to the productivity, growth, and unemployment structural problem we have in this country. First of all, in running an economy, you want to get the entire macro environment stable. And then you want to introduce initiatives that really allow the economy to grow, people to find jobs, people to make money, and improve their quality of life. In our day, we introduced as one of our major interventions what we call the One District, One Factory program.
Right.
And they argued that it wasn't strong enough, and that if they come to power, they will move it out and then replace it with what they call the 24-hour economy program, which was supposed to be the program that will ensure that we will triple productivity. So the same one job that one person does, or the one production cycle, will now be tripled. So that's how they explain it. One job, three jobs. I mean, like one job, three people, three shifts. And at the time, we were having a big debate about the fact that it is not fit for purpose. It will not work. But at the time, we were a very unpopular party, let's be honest with it. Cost of living was way through the roof, and once people are feeling the pinch, there's not a thing that you say that majority of people will listen to. So no matter how hard we try to explain to the people of Ghana that this template they are putting on the table is not superior to the 1D1F and will not work, we're not listened to, no problem, we were voted out. They've been in power for getting to the end of their first year now, and if you observe how it is going, I can tell you in all confidence that there's not much that is going to happen with this 24-hour economy by the time their 4 years are done. And the people of Ghana will find out that it was an exercise in deceit, just aimed at hoodwinking young people into voting for them, because they knew very well that this thing was not feasible. But because they also knew that the unemployment challenge was very high, what they then sought to do was to sell it to people, look the young people of Ghana in the eye and tell them this untruth, that one job will be done by three people over three shifts. And they knew it wasn't true.
Why can it not be done by
because the first thing that you need to do is to answer the question of demand. For all the industries or the jobs that have 24-hour demand, no government needs to literally stimulate or compel them to work for 24 hours. If the demand is not there, even if you gave a factory free electricity and he doesn't have demand for his products, and he produced and filled his warehouse, and there's no demand for it, next month he won't produce. So there's a fundamental flaw in the construct of their 24-hour economy program, and especially as they claim it is the solution to the question of productivity and unemployment. Remember that the One District, One Factory program, according to the NDPC annual progress report, it delivered 150 factories over the 8-year period. That's an average of, I think, about 18 or so a year. So in this 2025 that they have cancelled the 1D1F program, those about 18 factories that would have established and the jobs that young people would have found in them, that's the opportunity cost of the cancellation.
Right.
You would imagine, therefore, that they will replace it with something that will do better than that. Zero.
They have 4 years in government.
No,
and you
no
think that they
problem.
cannot
We have already
that
lost year one. Let us even assume without admitting that this 24-hour economy program will yield something. It would have made more sense to at least keep 1D, 1F while you are now ramping up your 24, so that you don't have zero in your year one,
right,
hoping that you use 3 years to do better than those 150. And if you look at the document that they have published, and even the amount of investment that is required to make it a reality, and the fact that they don't even have the funding for it, they've not done the feasibility studies for it, I'm telling you that it's not going anywhere. But that is just one of the many economic promises that they made, which, if you pay attention to the details, you find out it's not going to yield much.
And you talk about them promising over 800,000 jobs,
yes,
and 490,000 or so already, yes, that are there. And the road sector, the amount that has been allocated to ensuring the big push works. You do not think that this labor force, which you attribute to the road sector, and that's going to be manual labor, it's not going to be the kind of jobs that they presume they promised. In the end, the 24-hour economy will not work there. Roads are constructed all
As for the 24-hour economy, I tell you that go to bed. Look at, and you know, in this country, we have this habit of just listening to what people are saying, but we don't examine the actual data. I heard one of my colleagues from the NDC a few minutes ago saying that in 8 years, the MPP never built one hospital. And during the break, I was telling him that he should come to Achiase and come and look at the newly constructed Achiase District Hospital.
Built and
completed and opened and functioning. And there are many examples we can give. He goes on to say Agenda 1 8 years, MPP couldn't finish one. He forgets that even as at 2021, we were now about to start Agenda 1. So it wasn't an 8-year matter. But this is what they do. They spew out these narratives, and the facts don't back them. So let me take you into this budget. They claim that this budget is the budget that will create growth, jobs, and economic transformation.
Right.
So you look at where they are investing. And this is what we should be measuring at the end of 2026 to find out if where they put their investment generated growth, jobs, and economic transformation.
Right.
But even what they've put on the table, if you take their Break for Economic Transformation agenda, which is divided between what they call Feed Ghana and then Nkiti, and then you take their industrial program, and then you take their capital expenditure program, look at what is happening. So on the capital expenditure program, they announce, like Trump will say bigly, that they are going to create 800,000 jobs. When you go into it, they are claiming that 500,000, nearly 500,000 of those jobs are literally going to be laborers working on short-term construction jobs.
These are jobs still.
No problem. But just step out there and ask the young people of this country whether this is what they promised and this is what they are expecting as the answer.
Okay, what would you say if people liken it to NACO? That was also a job, that policy that the external government promised, and people said that it did not, materialize into what was expected.
NACO was supposed to help train people for a 3-year period to transition them into the public service. A good number of them got transitioned into the public service. But NACO did not solve the unemployment problem of this country. And if NACO had worked as efficiently as we thought it should have, and if NACO was the answer to the unemployment problem, the young people will not be angry that they didn't get jobs. So assuming without admitting that the MPP did NACO and it didn't even yield any effort, does that justify that the NDC comes to power and seeks to literally repeat that same thing? The answer for me respectfully is no.
Okay.
Now, if you look at even the big push that they are claiming is supposed to be this thing that will transform jobs, I can tell you on authority that they are beginning to cook the data on the big push. It's in the budget.
Cook the data.
They are fabricating data. When did they launch the big push? On the 16th of September. If you go into the appendices in the budget, and we in the mighty minority spend a lot of time going through the details. If you go into the appendices in the budget, Appendix 2C, for example, we will find that they are cooking the books on the big push. If you look at, I don't know if your producers can find it and project it, but if you look at the data, they say we're going to spend 21 billion Ghana cedis on domestic financed infrastructure or capital expenditure, out of and then an extra 13 billion on the big push.
Okay.
Now that 21 The argument essentially was that they were going to spend 7 billion on the old contractors, nothing on big push on the old contractors. That was the original budget.
Okay.
Then they were going to spend 13 on the big push, 13 billion on the big push.
Right.
Now, between quarter 1 and quarter 3, they have programmed that they'll spend 9 billion on the big push. They claim they have spent 10 billion as at the end of September.
Okay.
They launched Big Push on the 16th of September. How could you have paid between 16th of September and the end of Q3 10 billion Ghana cedis? What they were doing was that they were paying old contractors, but fabricating that they were paying for Big Push.
Okay.
In fact, if you go into the upper levels of the data, under the domestic finance, where they said they will not pay any of the old contractors, they are now saying that they will pay the old contractors 3 billion, when old contractors were in their original contemplation of Big Push were not supposed to be part of it. What is even worse, as at quarter 3, they have paid out of the mineral royalties flows, they have paid about 5 billion cedis.
Right.
This is what they are reporting now that they have paid. They are claiming that by the end of the year, the 5 billion, and Titi, please listen to this, the 5 billion that they have paid, it will reduce to 4.1. How do you reduce money you have paid already?
Right.
They are cooking the books even on the Big Push. And the fundamental issue that this government is having is similar to an issue that we had in 2017, where you remove some of the taxes, believing that it will increase revenue, and then you can fulfill your promises. And the reality is that after you remove those taxes, the data will show you that the revenue has actually dropped. In fact, I came to you with a copy of ISES.
Yes, because you have made the point that the revenues that they said that about 6 of them that they had removed, the taxes, the emissions, the COVID, the 1.5 withholding gold exports, the e-levy, that's nothing to shoring up revenue and building a bulletproof economy.
But that's nothing. Again, if you go back to the numbers that they themselves presented, Appendix 2B, you will find that at the time we were leaving power, the non-tax revenue as a percentage of GDP was 16.2%.
Okay.
Today, after they removed the taxes that they advertised or remove, and remember they said they won't introduce new taxes.
Yeah.
They've introduced 8 new taxes.
Where are they?
I'll go through it with you.
Okay.
But after introducing 8 new taxes and removing those
6 taxes.
Well, not all those 6 were even being collected. Emissions and the rest were not being collected. After removing those taxes, non-oil tax to GDP ratio. In fact, the non-tax revenue is now dropped to 11% of GDP. We've lost about 5% of GDP. Today's GDP is 1 trillion cedis. If you multiply that, that's about 50 billion Ghana cedis which they've lost. That is why they don't have the money to spend. But they cover it with the propaganda that, it's fiscal discipline, it's fiscal discipline. Remember that non-quad habit. You can't spend what you don't have.
When they start to spend, that's when you feel that they'll be hit with
It's not that when they start to spend, that's when you will feel the shortfalls. You can't spend what you don't have.
Okay.
If you're forced to spend, what you may have to do is that you may have to borrow, which became part of our problem.
What did they say is their way of raising revenue to, take place of the ones that they have abolished?
So
aside from the extra levy.
You will recall that at the beginning of the year, when the finance minister advertised that he was going to reduce or remove those taxes, and that he was going to move tax to GDP ratio from 13% to 18%. I was the one who seconded it on the floor of Parliament that if he's able to do that, we'll support him. I'm showing you data right now that it is actually dropping, and that they are not able to mobilize the resources they need to be able to even fulfill their obligations. That's why all the promises that they've made, by the time you hear they say they've launched it, when you say they should bring the program documents to Parliament.
Yes, you have talked about not having the policy documents in Parliament to scrutinize it.
Because, you see, it is those policy documents that will then help us to follow the details, what are the KPIs, and then all of us can see. This is a copy of ISES publication on the impact of our removal of the taxes.
Right.
2016, 19.4%. When we removed those taxes, thinking that we were going to get more revenue, we called it the nuisance taxes.
Right.
It dropped. to as low as about 15% of GDP. After the pandemic, we had to then try and introduce some new taxes to try and take it back up. That's how come we go back up to 16.2% of GDP.
Right.
And now that they came in and they came with these measures, they've already dropped to about 11. It's not hatred or partisanship, but if we will stop the politicization and pay attention to the data, we'll find out that we're doing ourselves a lot of harm. So their fundamental problem is that they've played politics with the revenue measures. They are not able to mobilize the resources, and that's why they are not able to fund all the things that they've been talking about.
And I say again that it's a year of the government, and you don't anticipate that they will be able to shore up revenue to be able to roll out these policies like the job creation. They're already distributing the checks for the Nkukwo Kitingiti.
They launched, first of all, Nkukwo Kitingiti was budgeted in the 2025 budget. They didn't do anything about it. One day to the reading of the 2026 budget, then they launched Nkukwo Kitingiti. How much productivity has gone into it? How much work has gone into it? How much has been spent on it? But what you need are credible revenue measures, which will then yield the resources you are looking for so that you can spend. I keep telling you, this government does so much propaganda with the data. If you don't look into it, you will believe them. For example, you recall they told the people of Ghana that we didn't leave them any buffers. We left them 11 billion Ghana cedis. The Controller and Accountant General has published it in the all of government accounts for the year 2024. As at the end of the year, that balance was forward of 11 billion cedis. Where did they get it from? But you may believe them, and that is why, for example, if you look at their financing program for this year, they are having to borrow by about 13 billion less because they inherited 11 billion, so they don't need to borrow that money. But listen, in all honesty, if we will stop the partisanship and pay attention to the data, we'll then be able to pay attention to some of the structural issues with the Ghanaian economy, which we have to fix. If we don't do that, okay, you are promising the young people 800,000 jobs. 500,000 of them already, as we are finding out, are going to be labor at construction sites for your big push project, which you say is about 3 years or so. So to the many young people out there, where are the quality lasting jobs that they are looking for? Another 250,000, you say you're going to employ them in the oil palm planting, etc. The young people of this country, okay, are looking for sustainable, well-paying jobs that they can rely on. If we keep playing this game with it over a period, the problem will get worse. The unemployment situation will get worse. And that is the basis on which we keep drawing their attention to these hard numbers. Stop the dancing, paying attention to these numbers.
And you've talked about the recommendations that the IMF has made about them, using the Bank of Ghana for revenue stability and all of that.
At the beginning of the year, they were doing something we started doing at the end of 2024. In fact, let me take you back even further. When COVID hit us, and when you say, they say, oh, don't say COVID, but it's a fact. What COVID did was that growth which we left at 5.7. By the way, we inherited growth at 3.5. Right. We brought it up to about average 7% in the first 4 years. Then we were hit by COVID. Growth dropped to 0.9%. Now, once an economy is not growing, the government won't get revenue. So government was not getting revenue. Exports were down. Once you are not exporting, you won't get foreign exchange.
Right.
Okay. So we had to then resort to spending the little foreign exchange that we had. And over a period when the foreign exchange ran out, the currency started depreciating because the economy was then yet to pick up. We then had to go to the IMF for a balance of payment support program to get a shore up of forex. Around the same time, we introduced a gold purchase program aimed at using cedis to buy gold, convert that gold into forex, and earn more forex to stop the depreciation of the currency. Now you will recall, no, that was a gold purchase program. Okay. It was later that we then realized that we could actually use part of the gold to even buy oil. Then we don't have to come and take the forex. So then we added the gold for oil program as another layer. Now, the currency depreciated to about 17% somewhere in 2024. I mean, to about 17 to the dollar somewhere in 2024. But by the time we started the market intermediation, because we have been able to mobilize a bit more forex, we were able to bring it down to about 14.1 or so by the time we were leaving office on the 7th of January. Sometimes you hear them doing their propaganda on the floor that when you were leaving it was 17, it wasn't 17, they have come to 14. Just be honest with the facts. Okay, but here's the point. That market intermediation is supposed to be a temporary measure while the market gets back on its feet. The government has now turned it into a permanent measure. because they found a window where we can earn forex. And so the actual market measures that are supposed to sustain the currency, they've abandoned it, and all they are doing is that they are pumping. Now, initially when we said that they were pumping, they literally looked Ghanaians in the face and lied to us that it's not true. The governor told us that it's not true. The president told us that it was good leadership when the bishops went to ask him about it. The IMF then paid attention to the data and realized that you are doing intermediation. And the IMF told them that they needed to bring a framework. When they asked them to stop, you all saw the currency depreciating again. It means that the problem has not been fixed. Those are the structural issues I'm talking about.
How long do you anticipate they're going to try to do this to keep the cedi stabilized?
Today you are able to do it because gold prices, unlike 2021 when we introduced the gold purchase program, gold prices today are at about $4,000 an ounce.
Okay.
So today you are able to get windfall and intermediate. But if you get excited by the windfall and intermediation and you don't pay attention to dealing with the structural issues, let me show you something. Our import balance at the end of October was about $14 billion. The year before it was about $12 billion same time. That means our import bill is going up. So if we have a balance of trade surplus and we are doing well to get the balance of payment to align with balance of trade, then we should be getting close to about $14 billion coming in. Then it will match. The currency will not depreciate.
Okay.
If you don't pay attention to that one to deal with it, and what you are doing is that now you are dumping. You've dumped about 8 billion of our reserves on the market. That means that if government was not intervening, what would the situation be? You haven't fixed the problem. And this is what we've done as, governments from 2001. At least I started paying attention to the economic data from 2001. And that's why we keep making the point that, listen, we have a fantastic window now to fix it structurally. If you don't want to do it and you want to dance and just keep
because people are also wondering why you are advising the government to do these things when you definitely should have been in power if you had done these things that you recommend.
I just explained to you the problems we had and when we started intermediation and the fact that intermediation is supposed to be a temporary measure while you deal with the permanent things.
Okay.
Why we are drawing their attention is that they appear, and they are actually saying that there's nothing wrong with it, they appear to think that intermediation is the permanent solution. And so having learned from our mistakes, we are drawing their attention that, be careful, because if you are not careful, when you are hit by one shock, or if gold prices go back to where they are, where are you going to get the dollars to intermediate on the market?
On what basis is the finance minister to force an adamant on this?
They believe that the gold purchase program, which we introduced, and now that they've converted the PMMC into the gold board, will continue to yield all of that forex. But we are telling them that, why? We put the framework in place. We are telling them that gold prices are a factor. Today the prices are $4,000. The same gold is selling at $4,000 per ounce when it was selling at $1,700 earlier. And the reason for which gold prices are rising, your business desk can check and tell you there are a lot of global uncertainties. So a lot of investors are shifting to gold. Central banks are buying gold to show up. That's why demand has gone up, and because supply hasn't been commensurate, the price has gone up. It won't be there forever. So we say this from a good place. That listen, pay attention. And let's deal with the fundamental issues. If you don't, so for example, these taxes that I'm showing you about, learn from our mistakes. If we remove taxes in 2017, we call them nuisance taxes, and revenue to GDP dropped this much, and you couldn't fund some of your interventions, and you then had to go back on your word to go and borrow from places that you said you borrow. Why do you want to repeat the same thing and then say that we should clap for you about it? We have a responsibility to draw your attention so that you don't repeat the same mistakes.
You criticize government's plan to purchase the 2 jets, the presidential jets as well, and said that the fiscal priorities must be clear. Why?
So the point we are making is this: we have